100 years ago, footballers played because they loved the game, and money was less important than it is today, with maximum wages in place, which were only abolished in 1961. Also, clubs around the world were traditionally owned and operated by local businessmen, who were held accountable by the local fans. But as football has grown with globalization and with the influx of media and TV rights, especially across the UK, the Premier League has recently become an investment goldmine. According to KPMG's European Elite report, the compound annual growth rate for sports teams is superior to all other asset classes over the past 5, 10 and 20 years. It's therefore no surprise to see that 9 of the top 20 richest clubs in the world play in the Premier League according to Forbes. But why are private equity firms now showing interest? Previously, private equity investors held concerns that football clubs weren't profitable enough to achieve the returns that they were looking for, and the opportunity cost was too great. As costs ballooned, there were fewer buyers in the market, starving demand and leaving no exit strategy, which is key with illiquid investments. But over the last 10 years, as TV money has increased and clubs are supposedly limited by the financial fair play, in 2014 the Premier League made a pre-tax profit for the first time in 15 years, seeing a collective £190 million in profits across the league. As American investors started to see NFL and MLB teams as more mature and less attractive investments, private equity money poured into the Premier League, creating surplus demand and driving up the prices. Nowadays, private equity investors have control of a number of clubs across England, including Bournemouth, Portsmouth, Liverpool and Crystal Palace. Matt Holsiser's Peak 6 fund owned a 25% stake in Bournemouth between 2015 and 2019. Josh Harris and David Blitzer bought 18% stakes in Crystal Palace in 2015, the same as Steve Parish, before setting up their own sports investment company, Harris Blitzer Sports Entertainment. Liverpool are wholly owned by Fenway Sports Group, who also bought Anfield Stadium, a similar transaction they completed with the Boston Red Sox and Fenway Park in 2002. And even Portsmouth have attracted investment from the former Disney CEO Michael Eisner through his PE fund, the Tornante Company. But despite the popularity among PE investors, it's not always easy pickings, which Oaktree co-founder Steve Kaplan and DC United owner Jason Levian found out in 2015 when they saw Swansea, the Premier League club, as the perfect investment. Swansea were one of the few clubs with zero debt, and the owners were inspired by UEFA's prediction that the Premier League would be the highest earning sports league in the world by 2017. Some suggested that the value of the club had nowhere to go but up. But despite the numbers adding up and looking attractive, the new owners seemed to gloss over one of the most important aspects of the game: relegation. Now, 5 years later, with Swansea still in the Championship, I wonder if they still consider the investment to be an underpriced asset. But it's not just the UK. Many American PE shops have bought stakes in European clubs too, like Roma, Hertha Berlin, Girondins de Bordeaux, and of course Paris Saint-Germain. Even the leagues are being discussed, with CVC mulling over a €2 billion investment in Serie A, and Apollo and KKR are considering a much-needed €300 million investment in a DFL following the pandemic. Despite football clubs being illiquid investments, the pandemic has actually caused most damage to publicly listed clubs, notably Juventus and Man United, whose share price, and therefore value, has dropped by 25%. But as private equity investors have seen the returns that the Premier League can offer, they've become more wary of downside risk. PE investors are now more savvy when structuring deals for clubs, buying up an initial stake, with the remainder reliant on satisfying long-term objectives like promotion or avoiding relegation. So now football clubs are the latest investment trend for private equity investors. But they're always looking for better returns in the long term, with some suggesting that a better investment with less competition for clubs, lower risk, and with much greater growth potential may not be men's football after all. Thanks for watching.